Every morning begins with noise alarm clocks, traffic, headlines screaming for attention. But beneath it all, there is a silence most never reach. The Buddha said, the quieter you become, the more you can hear. Have you ever asked, what part of you gets drowned in the noise? One man spent his whole life collecting opinions, his own, others, even strangers. He carried them like armor. But one day, it got too heavy. He sat by a pond and realized none of the voices were his. The Buddha taught, believe nothing, no matter where you read it, unless it agrees with your own reason and your own common sense. Are you living someone else's truth? A monk once said, the loudest people are often the loneliest. Noise becomes a shield against stillness, because in stillness truth speaks. But truth whispers, not shouts. Can you still hear your heart? Or have you silenced it with volume? She tried meditation, but her thoughts screamed louder. Her to-do list, her regrets, her fears, they formed a choir. Then one day, she did not fight them. She simply watched. The Buddha said, don't hate the arising of thoughts, only be still. What happens when you stop fighting your mind and start listening? A child asked, why is silence so scary? The teacher replied, because it holds nothing. And in that nothing, you meet yourself. The Buddha once sat in silence for days, teaching not through words, but through presence. What part of you are you afraid to meet in the quiet? There once was a man who talked constantly about mindfulness, books, podcasts, workshops. But when asked to sit in silence for 5 minutes, he squirmed like a child. Knowing about silence is not the same as living it. The Buddha said, better than 1,000 hollow words is one word that brings peace. Do your actions echo your wisdom or just your knowledge? A traveler stood before a mountain and asked, how long will it take me to find peace? The wind whispered back, as long as you ask. You are not yet listening. Peace isn't something we find. It's what remains when seeking stops. Can you sit without needing answers? In a crowded market, one voice kept repeating, buy this, do that, be more. He paused, closed his eyes, and listened inward. That moment of retreat became his revolution. The Buddha said, you are the master of your own mind. When did you last rebel? By being still. A musician once played the same note for hours. People laughed, why not more? He answered, others play many notes. I seek the one that matters. The Buddha sat under a tree, unmoving, for days. What would happen if you chose depth over noise? When storms came, the animals hid, but the bamboo bowed. It bent low but never broke. Stillness is not weakness. It is wisdom shaped by surrender. As the Buddha said, let what comes come. Let what goes go. Find what remains. Can you bend without losing yourself? He visited temples and teachers, but peace remained elusive. Then one night, in his tiny room, he lit a candle and just sat. No incense, no mantra, no teacher, just breath. The Buddha said, peace comes from within. Do not seek it without. What if the silence you crave is waiting in the room you always overlook? She once feared silence because it echoed her grief. But the silence never judged. It simply held her like earth holding fallen leaves. The Buddha said, pain is certain, but suffering is optional. What wounds do you keep noisy, afraid of what silence might reveal? He built a wall of music, conversation, scrolling anything to avoid the ache of being alone. But one morning, he sat at the edge of his bed and simply wept. In that moment, he was finally heard by himself. What if no one else needs to understand your silence but you? She saw a child sitting alone, smiling at the sky. "Don't you get bored?" she asked. The child replied, "No, I'm listening to the sky thinking." The Buddha smiled at the sound of trees. "When did you stop finding joy in silence?" The master said nothing for the entire lesson. Not one word, just tea poured slowly, intentionally. At the end, the student bowed deeply. Sometimes, the loudest lessons are unspoken. What wisdom are you rushing past because it's too quiet to shout? In the deepest cave, where even echoes refuse to answer, a monk sat unmoving. He had no answers, only breath. But in that breath was the world. The Buddha taught, "Meditate. Do not delay, lest you later regret it. What do you postpone because silence feels too unfamiliar?" A bird does not announce its song with a schedule. It sings when the sun warms its feathers. There is no performance, just expression. The Buddha said, "Live every act fully, as if it were your last." What if your silence is the beginning of your song? He tried to fill the silence with podcasts, calls, playlist, anything. But late at night, the stillness returned. And instead of resisting, he whispered, "I'm here." The Buddha never told us to run from our minds. He invited us to sit with them. Can you sit with what scares you? She once asked, "How do I know if it's wisdom or just my fear being quiet?" The teacher replied, "Wisdom never panics. Noise often disguises fear, but clarity walks barefoot." Are you confusing volume with truth? A leaf doesn't struggle to fall. It lets go. The wind takes it, and the ground receives it. The Buddha said, "Attachment is the root of suffering." What are you holding that wants to be set down gently? A child drew a single dot on a blank page. When asked what it was, he said, "The sound of quiet." Silence is not emptiness. It is the beginning. The Buddha taught us to see in the unseen. Can you hear the beauty in what isn't said? A man chased applause his whole life. Then one day, he walked into a forest and no one clapped. And yet, for the first time, he felt whole. The Buddha reminded us, praise and blame are like passing clouds. Who are you without your audience? She mistook silence for rejection. But over time, she saw silence was space, room to grow, room to breathe. Do you let others sit in silence? Or do you rush to fill the quiet with noise? A dog barked every time the doorbell rang, until one day, the door never opened again. Sometimes, the noise we create comes from waiting. The Buddha said, "Let go of waiting. Be present." What are you barking at that's already behind you? A seed doesn't shout to grow. It waits. Buried in darkness, it listens for the rain. Then quietly, it reaches. The Buddha smiled at patience. Can you grow without applause? He bought 1,000 tools to fix himself. None worked until he walked by a stream and just sat. He didn't fix, he dissolved. Sometimes, silence isn't healing. It's remembering what part of you is already whole. She asked, "Why meditate?" And the old woman replied, "So I don't miss my own life." Noise is often distraction disguised as duty. Can you be fully here, now, without adding anything? The storm passed, and only the quiet things remained. Trees, stones, breath. Noise comes fast, but truth lingers. What truths are waiting for your storm to pass? He finally turned off every screen, and in the silence, he heard laughter, his own, buried under years of seriousness. The Buddha said, "Be like children, curious light." What part of you did you mute to be mature? At the end, It wasn't what he said that mattered. It was the space he gave others to speak, the silence he held. The Buddha often taught not by answers, but by presence. What silence will you leave behind?